Welcome to another installment of Deconstructing Babylon, where we discern the signs and symbols of the mystery religion of Hollywood Babylon. I'm the Discerning Clerk, and I use a biblical framework to deconstruct my favorite movies from the 90s.
Noticed your eyeglasses. They don't have any lenses in them.
They're my dad's. The lenses hurt my eyes.
At one point on the channel, I tried to diversify my content with staff picks and top 5 lists. I had high hopes for a way to bring viewers to the channel, but the algorithm is what it is, and I decided I wasn't willing to compromise my message for the sake of viewers. As you know, or maybe you don't, I'm an elder millennial, a zennial, if you will, and my children are in Gen Z and Gen Alpha. A recent conversation with one of my Gen Z teens revealed that they don't watch long-form YouTube videos, but scroll through shorts. Now, much can be said about the sad state of that generation's attention span, but rather than lament or lecture, I chose to pivot. I used my editing software tool to create something new, but that still aligns with my deconstruction content. It's surprisingly easy to make shorts from the longer videos, and I am surprised at the views they garner. I hope it introduces my message of seeking truth to a different audience, a new generation. If you are here from a short, thank you for taking a chance to have your worldview challenged by the truth of God's Word. You're all brave for tearing down the Hollywood idol. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Today we are deconstructing the symbolism of 12 monkeys. I expect this one to be deep and have more truths than we may realize. While we've reviewed several Bruce Willis movies here, this will be the first foray into a Brad Pitt performance. There's one title in particular of his that I'd love to do, but then I'd be breaking the first 2 rules, and I'm a law keeper. 12 Monkeys was released in 1995 and gets 4.5 stars from the illustrious Video Movie Guide, which says, Bruce Willis gives a terrific performance in this brilliant, offbeat science fiction opus as a time traveler from the future sent to the past to save mankind from extinction. First-rate acting from Madeleine Stowe and Brad Pitt further enhances the suspense-packed plot. You don't dare miss a single minute in what has to be Terry Gilliam's masterpiece, a work on par with the best in the genre. Rated R. I won't delay any longer. Let's just see what we see in 12 Monkeys. The movie opens with a typed scroll that just so happens to be in Disney villain green. The scroll tells us that 5 billion people will die from a deadly virus in 1997, which is only 2 years from the release of this film, but is a full 23 years before a worldwide pandemic affected the entire population and divided history. The color choice of the typed font could be a nod to the dot matrix of the era, but it seems more intentionally the Disney villain green. I've used this term before, as Disney typically uses the shade of green to indicate a villain in scene or the presence of evil. But Hollywood Babylon loves to villainize the Most High and anything associated with holiness. And it is my opinion that this shade of green is identical to the aurora borealis, which is a glimmer of the hem of his garment. In John's vision of Yahweh's throne room, he describes seeing this shade of green, among others. The opening credits gives us monkeys swirling into a vortex, but it kind of resembles the image they gave us for the COVID-19 virus, don't you think? We'll probably see quite a bit of pandemic programming throughout. The first image we are shown is a close-up shot of the blue eyes of a child. And through this child's eyes, we witness a scene in an airport of a man being shot and a woman covered in his blood. It's a bad dream, or memory, of James Cole, an inmate in the future, most likely the year 2035, though they never say for sure. James's name has been called among others to volunteer for a dangerous and mysterious purpose.
Yeah, they got him up on the 7th floor. They hide him up there.
James suits up in full hazmat gear in order to go up and out. The prison is deep underground, below the uninhabited city, and the volunteer inmates are meant to bring back samples of life on the surface. I'm not sure if it's just a cold season or actually an eternal winter, but James manages to find a cockroach before seeing a large grizzly bear. The animals have taken up residence, including birds of many kinds and even a lion, which are all out of place in the cold climate. James returns to the underground to report his findings from the surface.
James Cole, cleared from quarantine.
I wonder how long he had to be quarantined. 2 weeks to flatten the curve? The official scientists representing several fields of study are impressed with James and want to give him a special assignment they say can reduce his sentence.
Not to volunteer could be a real mistake. Definitely a mistake.
We go back in time to 1990 in Baltimore, we're told, and we meet Dr. Catherine Riley, a psychiatrist brought in to meet the strange, seeming delirious man back in chains.
What's wonderful about the air, James?
Very fresh. No germs.
James was sent to the past, not to change anything necessarily, but to observe and report. But a mistake was made and he was sent too far back. He was only meant to go to 1996. He's transferred from lockup to the psych ward, and we meet fellow patient Tyler Durden. Jeffrey Goins.
I'll give him the deluxe mental hospital tour.
My man.
James's only way out of the past is with a phone call, which no one will let him make.
All of these nuts could just make phone calls. It could spread. Insanity oozing through telephone cables, oozing to the ears of all these poor, sane people, infecting them. Wackos everywhere, plague of madness.
COVID kind of felt like a plague of madness. Jeffrey has far more cognition and awareness. He may be paranoid, but he isn't stupid. And he isn't fooled either. He knows even now the system is rigged, and the television is the catalyst for spreading propaganda.
Okay. Buy a lot of stuff, you're a good citizen. But if you don't buy a lot of stuff, if you don't, what are you then, I ask you? What? Mentally ill.
James sits in front of a panel of doctors to try to convince them he's not crazy and doesn't belong in a psychiatric facility. He hasn't even had a trial or been in front of a judge, so I'm not sure they can legally detain him. There's still a legal process here. But he doesn't really help his cause when he tells them 5 billion people die in 1996 and 1997. They finally allow James to make his phone call, but the number isn't correct because the year isn't correct.
Wasn't who you expected?
That night, James interacts again with Jeffrey, who tells him that he won't be able to escape. Yet Jeffrey is easily agitated and in turn gets the other patients worked up. He rants about his father getting him moved to another facility and intimates his father is a powerful man.
My father's gonna be really upset, and when my father gets upset, the ground shakes! My father is God! I worship my father!
Interesting. We'll come back to that. Jeffrey helps James escape the locked room. He not only gets the key for the locked gates, but creates a massive diversion so James can slip out undetected.
Best place to go would be Florida. The Keys are lovely this time of year.
James doesn't make it out of the hospital, but he does vanish from his solitary, sedated, and restrained state, much to the shock of the officials who put him there. He wakes up back in prison in the time where we started.
Did you find out the big info? Army of the 12 Monkeys?
We're maybe clued in that Jeffrey has something to do with the 12 Monkeys, but not how or why. James still needs to gather information from 1996 as to how the 12 Monkeys managed to release a virus that kills 5 billion people.
You're lucky you didn't end up in ancient Egypt.
Egypt is a massive player in the life of Israel, mostly in the Old Testament and especially in the book of Exodus. The Hebrew word for Egypt, Misraim, has a dual meaning. It means the literal land or nation of Egypt and the native people there, but it also means sin. So when you read the Bible and Egypt is mentioned, you can read it as sin and transgression that Yahweh delivers his people from.
Have a Merry Christmas!
The future scientists have a recorded message from Catherine. She speaks of the army of the 12 monkeys and then wishes them a Merry Christmas. Christmas is an important holiday in the mystery religion. December 25th isn't the birth date of Messiah, but is the birth of the God-man Tammuz, son of Semiramis, the Queen of Heaven. Tammuz is considered the reincarnation of his father Nimrod, which is why Semiramis marries her own son. The images of the Virgin Mary and the Christ child are really images of Semiramis and the infant Tammuz. But I digress. They try to send Cole to the correct year, 1996.
We're sending you to the third quarter of 1996, right on the money.
Where Catherine is giving a lecture in Baltimore in November 1996, where she speaks of omens and divinations and quotes the Bible for some reason.
One of the four beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever.
She's speaking from Revelation 15, verse 7. She has no idea what it means, and she can't place meaning on it from a scientific or psychological perspective, though she attempts it using plagues, viruses, and other pestilence. Even then, in 1996, she believes chemical warfare and other technological horrors are these 7 vials of God's wrath, and perhaps they are. It's my experience that Christians don't want to acknowledge the righteous judgment that is coming, nor admit that sickness is one way that Yahweh accomplishes this.
I'm going right out to get vaccinated.
A red-haired man approaches Catherine at her book signing with similar eugenist language that Jeffrey ranted 6 years prior. James finally makes it to 1996 to Catherine, and he forces her to drive him to Philadelphia, which is where the virus originates. James keeps having the same dream/memory from the opening, the man in the airport being shot and the woman in the red dress. And now we see the woman as Catherine. It could be he's projecting, or maybe he's finally gaining some clarity.
You were my dream just now.
James tries to share his mission with Catherine, but the truth about his situation sounds crazy to the good doctor.
The army of the 12 monkeys, they're the ones who spread the virus.
James was just a boy in 1996. He has memories of the world before the virus, but experienced most of his life after. They speak often of the 5 billion that die, but clearly some people have immunity, yet they don't pursue that line of research.
You won't think I'm crazy when people start dying next month. First they'll think it's just some weird fever. Then they'll find out.
James is being tracked and monitored by an implant in his teeth, yet he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, tracking down the army of the 12 monkeys.
I'm looking for the army of the 12 monkeys.
They learn Jeffrey is at the helm of this small band of rebels and misfits. Their sign is the circle of red monkeys, and they mostly seem to be animal rights activists.
Jeffrey becomes like this big star, and the media latch onto him because he's picketing his own father, a famous Nobel Prize-winning virologist. You must have seen all that on TV.
They move on to track down Jeffrey, knowing the authorities are onto them, and are actively looking for Catherine. James leaves Catherine and finds Jeffrey in his father's house.
I'm here about some monkeys.
Monkeys?
Monkeys, yes. 12 of them.
Jeffrey goes along for a minute, but his psychosis, or whatever it is, gets him ranting and raving again. He may be paranoid, but he isn't stupid. And when he's wearing a tuxedo instead of scrubs, in his father's home instead of a mental hospital, he doesn't seem quite so crazy, though he still has a plan he intends to carry out. James escapes again and gets back to Catherine.
Jeffrey Coyne said that it was my idea about the virus.
Then he disappears, perhaps swept back to the future where he lives. Catherine speaks to the police about her traumatic experience, and while she still doesn't believe James about the virus, she never loses her compassion for a man she believes is very sick. James wakes up to a strange serenade from the future scientists, who are thrilled by the result of his mission.
You connected the army of the 12 monkeys with a world-famous virologist.
This was all documented by the mainstream media. The other rebels said Jeffrey got famous for this reason. Certainly there would be extensive records the scientists could review, which would be infinitely easier than sending prisoners through time and space.
I am insane, and you are my insanity.
Meanwhile, Catherine starts to come around and believe what James told her over and over again.
I'm in trouble here. I'm losing my faith.
James asks the scientists to go back to 1996, not to observe and report back, but to stay and live, even though he's already been born and is by this time a child. Catherine tries to warn Jeffrey's father, the virologist, about Jeffrey's potential intentions, and a familiar face returns. The eugenicist from the book signing is a researcher in Dr. Goines' lab.
It was released in Philadelphia probably on December 13th, 1996.
Philadelphia, the place known as the City of Brotherly Love, is also a church for whom Jesus has a message in Revelation. It is known as the one faithful church, and the one kept from the hour of trial that tests those who dwell on the earth. Catherine is acting crazy now that she believes the truth about the virus.
Why don't we forget about my psychiatrist and concentrate on the task at hand?
Jeffrey is accelerating his plan with the 12 monkeys, and Catherine maybe means to stop him. James comes back for Catherine, and now he says he's mentally divergent and not a time traveler. But Catherine won't let him go to the authorities for help.
Look, you were right. I am mentally ill. I imagined all these things, these people.
James and Catherine are both on the run now, fugitives from justice. Catherine leaves a voicemail for the future scientists, and James realizes he's not insane or mentally ill. He really is a time traveler and is having some flashbacks. Catherine gets them both a disguise.
Can you tell me what floor the wigs are on?
Jeffrey's plan was never to release a virus.
I don't have access to a virus.
But to release animals from their captivity. And so he does. James knows he cannot change the past, and the virus was manufactured and released to kill the majority of the population. James and Catherine, now in disguise, head to the airport to flee to Florida. They are still wanted, after all.
If they identify us, they're going to send us someplace, but it won't be Key West.
The true cause of the virus is revealed. The eugenicist, Dr. Peters. I mean, that's what IMDb says his name is. I'm not sure I've heard it used at this point. But the mild-mannered, red-haired doctor is traveling all over the world to release this deadly virus.
It's empty.
Well, yes, to be sure. It looks empty. I assure you it's not.
This TSA agent is most likely patient zero in Philadelphia. And now we're back to where we started. The boy, James, watches his older self get shot and dies in front of him. The woman was Catherine all along, and James was the man. Dr. Peters gets away because they cannot change the past.
You might say that we're the next endangered species. Human beings.
The final image mirrors the first image. The blue eyes of a child who has witnessed something horrific and now gazes upward into a known future. The virus pandemic programming was clearly all over this movie. The lab-grown virus that is purposely spread in order to vastly reduce the world's population. The man responsible for this doesn't get too much airtime. As I mentioned, I don't even think they say his name at any point, so it's not really about him. And it's actually not really about the virus necessarily, though they allude to the fact that viruses can be considered Yahweh's judgment on the disobedient people on the earth. James Cole, JC, is the false Messiah, or even Antichrist. Though his actions don't save the world, and he's actually powerless to do anything. But his mission is meant to save the future. I find it interesting that he witnesses his own death as a child and lives in a before and after time. He has immunity to the virus that he may have been exposed to while at the airport, yet they never seem to test the people who do survive the pandemic. Is there something about him and them that makes them immune? And if so, isn't it possible to create a vaccine from their natural immunity? I actually have so many questions about the bleak future where only a small percentage of people live. Why are so many of them criminals? Does everyone live underground? And when did they build the subterranean cities during so much strife on the surface? How did they develop the technology to time travel? Then there's the matter of the army of the 12 monkeys and their leader, Jeffrey. The number 12 will always lead me to think about the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, and the 12 disciples of Jesus. None of them are named Jeffrey, but several have a name that begin with the letter J: Judah, Joseph, John, and James. Tribe of Judah is where we get the name Jew from. They represent people descended from Judah, and Messiah is such. Joseph, famously rejected by his brothers and sold into slavery in Egypt, is a savior for his people, but who doesn't have a tribe himself. It is instead his half-Egyptian sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who each receive half an inheritance. James is the half-brother of Messiah, being born to Mary and Joseph after Jesus was born. And John. John wrote a gospel account and 4 other letters in the New Testament, including the book of Revelation. This book was referenced a few times throughout by Catherine herself and a doomsday street prophet. It is in the book of Revelation that we also find the reference to the church in Philadelphia. And one more symbol that was quite constant throughout. Keys. Keys for James to escape. Monkeys. So many monkeys. And several references to Key West, Florida, or simply the Keys. The key in Revelation is the same key the prophet Isaiah spoke about. It is the key of the house of David. And the one who holds the key may shut and no one opens, and open and no one shuts. His authority is final. So what does it all mean? As we know, Hollywood Babylon uses counterfeit and reversal all the time. They villainize the Most High. They twist the scriptures and the stories and the symbols. They introduce the Antichrist in many forms. Is there a judgment day coming? Yes, of course. Does Yahweh use sickness, illness, and pestilence to judge people? I believe they are ways to correct us, to turn us towards obedience. Scripture tells us that he corrects his own children first. He desires holiness, and that we would desire holiness likewise. We cannot change the past as much as James couldn't. We can't change what's coming, as it is written. We can only prepare ourselves by hiding ourselves in the one who holds the key, Messiah. He's the only way. Fear is not the way. Fear of the future, fear of the enemy, fear of getting sick, fear of dying or surviving, none of it will save you. And none of it will change what is to be. Rest assured, true believer, only reverent fear of the Most High and his coming judgment can do anything, for that is what we are saved from. Listen to his voice, know his word, find yourself in Messiah today, for we certainly find ourselves in the last days. So that's it for this one. Don't take my word for it. Know the word for yourself. Give the video a thumbs up if you agree and a thumbs down if you disagree. Subscribe if you want to, but don't follow me. Follow the one who saves you. And until next time, keep looking up.
The movie never changes. It can't change, but every time you see it, it seems different because you're different. You see different things.